Going live, and we're live. It
Yay.
is Saturday or Sunday, April 19th, 2020. Boris Johnson may be out of the hospital, but now he is under fire for missing key coronavirus meetings in the run up to the crisis in the UK. The man can't catch a break. The Afghan president's palace is under assault from the coronavirus. My Wall Street Journal alert on my phone just informed me. We don't have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, we have Carrie Goldberg, who is our mystery guest. Kate, introduce the estimable, awesome, really unpredictably unexpected, awesome Carrie Goldberg. And then I have a really cool story about her.
Okay, awesome. Oh my God, I love this story. I'm so glad you're telling the story. Carrie, thank you so much for coming on. Carrie is a incredible attorney who is quite the pugilist. You might say, both against trolls, perverts, psychos, stalkers, but also people who tend to like Section 230. And despite the fact that I'm like mediocrely fine with Section 230, Carrie and I are still friends, amazingly. She is the author most recently of Nobody's Victim, Fighting Psychos, Stalkers, Pervs, and Trolls. She has her own incredible law firm, whose services I have used, and they're wonderful. If you are one of her clients, you will get a water bottle in the mail that has troll tears written on it. It is one of the few things that I bugged out with for my apartment that when I left. And we are so lucky to have her on today. You've been covered in you've been in I've lost track, but Glamour, you were in Glamour, Vanity Fair, New York Magazine, New York Times Magazine, all the magazines. With these great, you always get really good pinup, amazing kind of takes of you. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on the show. And Ben has a really great story about Carrie that's hilarious.
So I'm not sure which story you're talking about, but I just want
to have to do with TSA?
Oh, I wasn't thinking of that story, but I will add that story to the queue. I'll tell both.
Add that story.
No, I just want to tell the story of how I met Carrie, which is a few years ago. I was doing a study on sextortion with Quinta Jurecic and Clara Spira and Cody Poplin. And none of us had ever worked on this subject before, but we'd stumbled upon this issue and had done this research to create a kind of data set on sextortion, which we were flabbergasted by how many cases and how many victims we identified. And there simply was not a literature on the subject. And so we reached out to the people who had done work that seemed even remotely related to it. And one of them was a cold email that I sent to Carrie Goldberg asking whether she would review our manuscript. And Carrie did. And among all the people that we reached out to, she was actually the one who turned out to have a whole bunch of clients who had been sextorted. And so she gave us the most amazingly helpful, constructive comments about the modalities of the way sextortion cases take place from a victim point of view. And then when we released it, we asked her to speak at our virtual launch event, which was actually done in a kind of Zoom-like fashion, and did that. And all of this was long before we had ever met. When we actually met, to come to Kate's story, by the time we actually met, Carrie was a fan of One Baby Cannon, which at the time I was religiously carrying around with me because people liked meeting baby Cannon. And so we were at a conference together at the University of Maryland, hosted by the great Danielle Citron, whom we recently had on the show. And Carrie was delighted to actually meet baby Cannon and wanted to take him outside and get a selfie with her. So after the conference, we went outside and Carrie held baby Cannon up to her face and I took a picture and then drove Carrie to BWI Airport, where she was pulled aside by TSA for having explosive residue all over her hands and face. And she spent a fair bit of time, quality time with the TSA in secondary screening. And I have wondered ever since what those conversations were. Yeah, I was using a firearm, but it was a baby cannon. And it was like, it's only a little cannon, and I didn't carry it with me. But yeah,
yeah, Carrie, what did you possibly tell them that made this okay?
Well, I'm looking for the picture, by the way. And
okay.
It is a great
If you'll remember, I was wearing a Husqvarna cap that day.
Yes, and I had a chainsaw in my trunk as well.
You were like, oh, let me get my Husqvarna chainsaw out of my car.
I like the range that our friends have.
The trunk was open because we were putting Carrie's suitcase in the trunk. And the suitcase went into the trunk. Like, the chainsaw came out.
What's your intention? Are we really going to the airport, Ben?
Oh my God. It's just really incredible. You find the picture, but I also want to introduce the furry friend that Carrie had on the show. That is her new dog, Apollo, which is like the perfect name as we kick off Pugilism Week. Trumpets fanfare.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not playing music on the show anymore, Carrie, because it basically I got dinged by the copyright police.
Oh God!
They can't keep abuse off of YouTube, but boy, can they keep pirated Dolly Parton off of YouTube.
I'm glad that they're listening and watching.
Yes, it's just so that happened. But yeah, I think that I've never heard, by the way, and I don't know how long a story it is, but I've never heard the story of how you got baby Cannon and baby Cannon became a thing, Ben.
I think
you know that story, Carrie?
I mean, do you guys really want it's not a short story.
Okay.
And I don't want to use up the time. Maybe we should have like a special baby Cannon episode that has like the whole origin story and everything.
We can do that.
But I don't want to like hijack Carrie's time with a baby Cannon thing.
I can't find that picture, but I'll retweet it shortly after this.
Great. So Carrie, how are you doing?
Fine. Oh, can I just respond to that in the incredibly beautiful introduction? Thank you. Like my first time meeting Kate was we were both on the panel at Fordham.
Oh yeah, the women's like the women law panel, yeah.
And I actually made the gaffe of talking about we were talking about like psychos and stalkers, and somehow there was a question in the audience and somebody asked, what types of professions are the offenders, and
this is great.
It's like, well, the 5 professions that we see the most are entrepreneurs, musicians, professors, and then the audience just gasped. And I was like, oh, there's so many.
Yeah, and wasn't it like?
And then I was like, oh, I was very embarrassed.
Wasn't police officers one of them? That was surprising to me.
And police officers. Thanks, babe. I just got some pizza. Thanks. Do you want to say hi? No.
Hi, Torch. So yeah, so there's, so I think that that's kind of a nice way to lead things off. You've had a couple big cases. We can talk about Herrick if you want to.
But I want to first talk also about how I didn't really love you at first, Kate.
Oh.
I loved your dress. But we didn't, I mean, we had very differing positions during that.
Yes.
But we've come to really enjoy our time, and we don't always talk about things like Section 230.
No, and I think that I learn a lot from your disagreements with it, and try to be like, update my priors on how I approach Section 230.
So for those of you who don't have a Section 230 background, let me just say that I am a moderate critic of Section 230, roughly, the Eugene V. Debs of Section 230. Carrie is kind of like the Communist Party of Section 230.
I would say Malcolm X.
I was gonna like she's pretty hardcore. I think, is it fair to say, Carrie, when you wake up seething in the middle of the night, there's always a Section 230 element to your rage?
Yeah, I mean, right now there's a lot of different rages happening. But the Section 230 one is always like bubbling. It's funny when somebody wants somebody like new to the universe of Section 230, maybe a student or something, interviews me about it. And if they haven't interviewed a lot of other people, I sometimes have to just tell them, just so you know, I'm a little bit like on the farthest extreme possible when it comes to like wanting to abolish this law. So
are you actually capable of giving a neutral account of what Section 230 is?
I can do it really quickly.
No. I actually want
am I capable
to do it. Can you give like a neutral account of Section 230?
I think so.
Okay, go for it.
So Section 230, back in the mid 90s, some of our lawmakers, our federal lawmakers, were awakening to the fact that there was porn on the internet. Like
Senator Exxon.
Yes. And there was a blue book that Senator Exxon had on his table, right? And it was all these printouts of pornographic images that could be found on the internet. And so apparently all these people would go into his office and check out the blue book, and I don't know, maybe take it into the bathroom or something with them.
I remember that line in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? I watched every disgusting second of this twice. That was always the way Senator Exxon came off for me.
So the bunch of the senators were like, we really need to do something about the pornography on the internet, because it's going to just completely contaminate the brains of all these young whippersnappers who might start using the internet. So they created this law. Which
is exactly what happened, by the way.
Well, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, they were right.
So they created this law called the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, or I mean, just the Communications Decency Act, which outlawed pornography on the internet, and also had a little 26-word section called Section 230, which said that interactive computer services could not be held liable if they were sued for publication torts relating to the information provided by a third-party information content provider. The reason for this the addition of this section, though, was because there'd been these there'd been several different lawsuits against internet service providers like CompuServe and Prodigy.
Remember CompuServe?
I was
like, not really.
You just said that as though like there was this thing called CompuServe, but that's like saying, do you remember the the East India Tea Company, right? It's kind of like this, like, old version of what we think of as the internet.
So my family was a Prodigy family, and so that was our bulletin board. We had Prodigy email, and that was what I used to always get my whole family kicked off of, because I was so completely disgusting and obscene in as a high school student on the bulletin boards.
But after 1996, Prodigy had no liability for your disgusting behavior, Carrie.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was upset because they were actually censoring me. And now I know why. But so at the time though, back in the 90s, people who were defamed on these very two-dimensional bulletin boards would get sued, or they would sue. But in addition to suing the individual who was talking trash about them, they would also sue the bulletin board, the information service provider. And there was some very large
there were discrepancies between the decision, like the result.
Yeah, because sometimes in some of the cases, like in CompuServe, right, they found that there was no liability, right? But in Prodigy, they found that there was liability because Prodigy had been. Did I get these mixed up? Prodigy had
no, you got it right.
It had been editing the content, and therefore it was itself playing the role of a publisher, and therefore it should be liable for all the content on its platform. So our lawmakers, I guess it was Wyden, who was a
Chris Cox and Ron Wyden.
Yeah, they were like, oh, this internet could be a really cool thing, but we can't have all these big bad plaintiffs suing these internet companies all the time. So let's have this section of
because they thought that it was going to like kill the internet, basically. They thought that if like you sued,
the theory was if you hold the platform liable for the most reckless thing that 16-year-old Carrie Goldberg publishes on it, which they have no ability to control at the time, right, except by manually reading it and deleting it, you'll kill these engines of innovation, CompuServe, Prodigy, AOL, and these on what they called online services were the future. They of course had no concept that these companies would vanish within a few years, and what we'd have are social media entities. But that was the theory of it.
And there was also the idea that like they wanted to incentivize censorship because of all of this pornography that was out there that they could not censor cleanly under the First Amendment, right? Or they thought that there were harms happening, like Carrie Goldberg harming like teenage Carrie Goldberg. And so they wanted to incentivize companies to take down and to moderate these types of things, but they couldn't order them to do that. And like under these two different decisions, if the companies, basically what Prodigy told them was like, listen, if you police this area and you do any moderating whatsoever, you put yourself on the line for liability for any screw up that you make. So if you fail to take down something good or something bad, and we sue you, then like you're screwed. So it was like these dual kind of like things. They both wanted to incentivize them keeping stuff up and them taking stuff down.
Right.
Yeah, and sorry. That was just like, it's always kind of how I think about it.
And so of course, so it gets passed in 1995, goes into effect in 1996. And I think it like wasn't probably all that controversial back then.
Well, the CDA was, because it got struck down in Reno.
And then in 1997, all the language about the child pornography was struck down for First Amendment reasons. But the 26 line passage of Section 230 stuck around, and over the years, and Ben, this was a word that you used that I've been using nonstop. It's been interpreted so extravagantly I extravagantly is like the best word ever for the way courts have interpreted it, because I think that at the time the internet was so much more two-dimensional, and really most of the things that you could get in trouble for had to do with publishing and you know, obscenity, defamation. But over the years, the law, the Section 230 immunized basically these internet service providers for anything, any kind of
Right.
tort, whether it had to do with negligence or product liability, as in the Grinder case, or it didn't, you know, it wasn't, didn't have to be a publication.
Yeah, I mean, I like, just to give you an idea of how extravagant, I don't remember using that term, but I certainly don't run away from it. It's absolutely, I think it's absolutely right. How extravagant the interpretation of was, the concern that led to 230, this aspect of 230, was that if I defamed Carrie, the carrier would be held liable for it. And since these are real-time things, if I said, for example, some of the things about Carrie that our Zoom trolls say in our Q&A, she wouldn't sue me, she would sue Zoom. And that's a legitimate policy concern, right? But then you have this other problem of Zoom.
Because and the reason we have that, just to give a little bit of back history, is like we allow that for things like the New York Times and like other types of publishers. There are types of publishers that if the problem with Section 230 in the internet is it's unclear what to compare an internet platform to, and especially it was in 1995 or 1996, which was to try to understand, is this like the New York Times, such as they should be liable for these things, or are they more like this neutral conduit? And I think we can all recognize in this extravagant thing that is like like an oversimplification, no matter, and there's nothing perfect that fits.
Right. So let's now take the extreme example on, and I'll let Carrie describe the Grinder case, which is the near extreme example, but it's actually not the extreme example. The extreme example is a site called Omegle, which those of you listening who are over the age of 21 have never heard of, or maybe 25. And everybody under the age of 25 has smiled as I've mentioned it, because knowledge of it is ubiquitous. Omegle is a social media site whose slogan is "Talk to Strangers." And I would not say it is a site that is designed to help sexual predators access children. But I would say that if you were going to design a social media site for the express purpose of helping sexual predators access children, it would look a hell of a lot like Omegle. And Omegle recognizes that. And if you go look at their site, they have a disclaimer that, at least the last time I looked at it, used to say, sexual predators have been known to use Omegle, use at your own peril. Human nature is inherently unpredictable. Everybody who uses this site is responsible for their own behavior. And of course, under Section 230, they are absolutely correct. If they provide this service knowing and even kind of intending, and I'm not saying they intend, but they certainly do know, as suggested by their disclaimer, that sexual predators use the site for purposes of accessing children, they cannot be held liable for that because of Section 230. Only the individuals can be held responsible for their actions. And so, like, I do think that is an example of extravagance to use to, I also think it is very hard to justify as a matter of policy. And just to foot stomp that point, imagine you did that in meat space, right? So what Omegle does is you sign on and they pair you with a random stranger. who may be another 13-year-old looking for kicks, or maybe a 47-year-old looking to groom you for something. They do basically no checking. And you get put in a chat room with that person. So imagine you did that in Meat Space and you had like a big market, a sort of agora, and people could walk in and, you would put them in a private room with a random person. That entity would be radically liable for anything that went on in that room, right? And there is no Section 230 that says, if Zoom randomly pairs me to be in a chat in a physical space with Carrie Goldberg and she does something horrible to me, the hotel in question, the Ritz-Carlton, bears no responsibility. But if it is Zoom, that's Section 230, and Zoom is absolutely immune from liability. And I do think that is really hard to justify. And having spent as much time as I have on the sextortion cases, I have no doubt that the companies are reaping an incredible windfall from not being responsible for the unbelievably disgusting activity that takes place on their platforms, and that they have knowingly designed their platforms to facilitate, if not intentionally. And I want to call out particularly Kick Messenger as the worst of the worst here, beyond Omegle. So with that as a preface, Carrie, like a lot of watchers have a sense of Grindr. How bad is Grindr in this department, and how immune are they?
Really quick, I just kind of want to frame, bring us from the historical conversation and what you just said, and kind of stage what the current what the meaning of being pro 230 or anti 230 is now. I think that pretty much people who are super pro 230 tend to be free speech enthusiasts, people who believe in kind of technological self-help and self-governance, and that technology companies can govern themselves. I would say it's more civil libertarians, kind-minded people, and that type of thing is kind of the camp that's pro 230. A lot of libertarian kind of types, because they like small businesses and they think that Section 230 allows small businesses to do their thing and protects them, and they think that people and they tend to undervalue the scale of harm that these companies can provide. And on the other side, I would say there's kind of there's a progressive left that tends, not even left, but a kind of a move towards the anti 230, where Carrie, you're the very kind of farthest that I know on this, is just kind of this allows huge companies to just do exactly what Ben said, take advantage of things. There's all of these people who are experiencing these really serious harms and have no form of recourse for any of their harms, which you're about to tell us. I really can't wait for you to tell the story about Herrick. And I think that just personally me, I am solidly see both sides of what 230 provides, and think that there are in particular bad actors, and think that platforms are moving towards a product-based kind of identification more than they are a communications identification. So for that, by that, I mean, I think they're moving less about being about speech and more about being about conduct. And the more they do that, I think the more they should be not covered by Section 230. But that doesn't mean that I think that Section 230 should go the way of the dinosaurs. But things like Kick Messenger, things like Omegle, all of those things are not also what typically gets wrapped up in Section 230 stuff, which is Twitter and Facebook and all of the huge ones which do a decent job under 230. But
yeah, so just to be clear, I know Facebook gets a lot of guff, and rightly so, about a lot of things. In my experience in the sexual exploitation department, they are not the problem in the 230 arena. And whatever they may be in the disinformation arena, I have not seen in my sextortion research a lot of the activity taking place on Facebook, and they're actually pretty good at removing. You don't see a lot of non-consenting nude images on Facebook. They're relatively good at getting that stuff off. And so, like, this is the biggest problem here, is in, at least in my experience, in the relatively up and coming companies. And Grindr is a really good example of that, where they're, this is a company that's growing very fast. It's, and, they cut some corners, a lot of corners, and they cut them knowing that they couldn't be held liable for it.
So Carrie, tell us about your case, and just really quickly for the high level, just at the really highest level, start out with what like Grindr is.
Okay, so I don't really have an agenda against Grindr, but as a victim's rights lawyer, though, if somebody comes to my office and their life has been overturned by a person, a company, a school, or a product, then I'm gonna fight to the death. Like, I don't, so, and it is just disgusting to me that there could be an entire sector of industry that is just like outside the courts. But so Grindr is a gay dating app, that the most popular gay dating app in the world, with like I can't remember how many users, but like 4 million users, or and it's in like 120 different companies. And it basically makes its money by through like selling ads, like all these companies do, geolocating people and selling ads to them based on location. And it's free for users. You can pay for a stepped up program. So in 2016, the very, very end of 2016, Matthew Herrick came to my office. He was brought by some legal aid attorneys who couldn't, they'd reached the point where they could continue helping him. He'd gotten an order of protection. He'd reported the abuse that he was dealing with to the police like 10 times, and they were like hamstrung. And he explained to me that for the past couple months, his ex-boyfriend had been impersonating him on Grindr, using his picture and his name and his location, and then sending strangers to Matthew's home to, have sex with him. And the guy would, the ex would, DM with the strangers and make it seem like Matthew had, these rape fantasies and had drugs to share. And so at all hours of the day and night, people would come. They'd be waiting for him in the stairwell. They'd follow him into the bathroom at work. It was nonstop. It was as many as like 23 times a day for altogether about 9 months of this. And at about month 2, he hired me. And at the time, I had been doing all this work with different big tech companies like Facebook and Google, dealing with their revenge porn policies. So I was like super smug and thought I could just, call up their general counsel and get this guy removed from the platform. But there was no one responded to my emails, no one responded to my calls. And so we ended up going to Supreme Court in New York, getting a restraining order that required that Grindr banned this guy from their platform. And we served that on Grindr, and Grindr just continued to ignore us. And more and more people were coming to Matthew's home. It was scary as all hell. Like there were a couple people that attacked.
Were people angry, by the way? I've never were they pissed when they showed up and realized that they had been duped? Were they nice to him?
Sometimes they didn't believe him. No, they were not nice. I mean, some of them were just like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm so embarrassed. Others were really fucking pissed. And
Well, they went
like
a long
one tried to
way
steal
for
his
some
roommate's
sex
phone.
and drugs.
There were altercations, especially the people who came that were really strung out. Those were really always very ugly encounters. And then later on, the offender impersonating Matthew would say homophobic things and racist things. And so people not only were coming to have sex with him, but they were coming to kick his ass. So Grindr was just completely MIA, even after we'd brought this lawsuit. And then they hired, some fancy white shoe lawyers who removed it to federal court. And I mean, I'm up until this point, I've always just been like a down and dirty state court kind of girl. And so now I was like, oh shit, federal court, God damn it. That was very intimidating for me. So the case was in federal court. Finally, their attorneys appear, and I'm trying to get the restraining order extended, and their argument is, well, there's no merit to anything that they're arguing. We're completely immune from liability under Section 230. So you can't even restrain this. You can't even extend this restraining order. And I was like, no, judge, check it out. Section 230 is about, third-party content. And I'm not suing Grindr for anything that this other guy did. I'm not suing them for the words he used or the content in the fake profiles that he was making. I'm suing Grindr because, they're not responding to my client. They don't have the infrastructure to respond to him. They're being negligent. And then the other attorneys were like, yeah, but check it out. Like, our client doesn't even have the technology to exclude this user. And because they're immune from liability under Section 230, they don't have to. It's not negligent, it's reasonable. It's reasonable not for them not to have to, make an editorial decision about who uses their product. And I'm like, yeah, but users are not that's not an editorial decision. That's something else. But really this light bulb went off when Grindr was like saying that they didn't have the technology to exclude somebody, because, in my mind, it's just like, it's such an arithmetic certainty that if you have a dating app that facilitates in-person sexual encounters, it's going to sometimes be abused by rapists, by child abusers, by stalkers. And if you've not designed into your product a way to exclude those users, then you've created a dangerous product. And so after that court appearance, I went back to my office and amended the complaint so that it became a product liability case. And I thought that this was like the sure way to get around Section 230. And of course, my adversaries were like, well, they're just trying to skirt Section 230. Well, yeah, of course I'm just trying to skirt 230. Like, it is like this huge boulder that is like in the way of getting justice for my client, and for getting this goddamn miserable and dangerous situation to end. But ultimately, the entire case was dismissed on a 12b6 motion because of Section 230, and which means that Grindr didn't even have to prove that they didn't have to even plead it. They didn't have to claim anything, that they were entitled to the immunity. The case was dismissed in the earliest stage possible, which is basically the court saying that, Matthew didn't deserve to be in court because this type of defendant is so protected that we're going to just throw the case out at the earliest stage. And me, the judge, is going to make all these factual determinations. I'm going to determine that this is an interactive computer service, that they were being held responsible for their role as a publisher, and that it was all about, information content provided by a third-party information content provider.
To be fair, the law and the fact differential there in a 12b6 is like, it's always bullshit, Carrie. Like that's always like, I think that's always bullshit. Like I've always thought that the law like they teach you in law school, as you know, like, oh, like this is a finding of fact versus a finding of law. And like, I know, I think that like, but this is why this is, you know, anyways, sorry. I think that like, it's interesting, but I don't think that that's like, it's not unique to this case. That type of shit happens all the time.
No, but it is like, I mean, like it's supposed to be that like everything that, you know, if everything that you're pleading is true, then it should be able to survive a 12b6 motion. I mean, under Iqbal and Twombly.
But
I mean, it's
I want to take this in a different direction. So the Second Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the dismissal. The Supreme Court refused to hear the case. So let's dispense with the question of whether they correctly read the law or incorrectly read the law. Let's say, as a functional matter, the circuits are broadly in agreement about what this law means. So this makes it a legislative matter at this point. If we're going to get a situation where a company even has to think about how their service is being used, we're going to have a legislative remedy because we're not going to get a judicial remedy.
And Carrie and I went to a very pugilistic meeting at the DOJ that was ostensibly about Section 230. And I think we both were on panels. Again, I've mentioned this before. I don't know if you counted as testifying, but whatever it was, we were giving our commentary. And like, I think that we were both like walked away from that being like, this is a beard for the Earn It Act. And this is like complete garbage. And this isn't really about amending Section 230 about the issues we care about at all.
It's really about encryption.
It is really about encryption. So Carrie, do you agree?
That event most certainly was about encryption and also about this belief of bias in the content moderation against
conservatives.
Yeah.
So
it was like crazy.
So let's take that apart for a minute, because like so far we've been talking about one subject, which is whether the immunity given to platforms is too expansive. And all of a sudden, with reference to one DOJ event, we have radically expanded the subject to include the propriety of companies using end-to-end encryption and whether companies are discriminating against conservatives in their content moderation. So I'm just going to throw this open to both of you. How the heck did we get from this relatively discrete liability issue to this very expansive conversation about tech policy and content moderation?
I mean, I would say that like it's this very interesting thing in which conservatives are biased against in certain ways on like online platforms, but that's because they trend towards things like hate speech, which are widely taken down on platforms, and there's all these types of things, which means that they want some type of neutral platform to post other shit to, which means that they're anti-230. Which means that actually, really interestingly, people like Carrie and people like robust conservatives come around to the same point and are like, we're both anti-230, and like maybe we can kind of put our differences aside over this common ground. And like the thing is that there's just that's kind of, and so similarly, like there is conservatives also have this, specifically this DOJ and this executive have this wish for like huge executive reach and control. And so like ending end-to-end encryption would be a huge move towards having more reach into people's privacy and secure data, and keeping them outside the realm of surveillance. So I guess that's how I formulate like how they fit together.
Carrie, what do you think? Do you think that is there common cause for you and Bill Barr to make against Section 230?
Okay, so
or Josh Hawley?
I'm not approaching Section 230 from a speech direction. I'm looking at it as like, I'm dealing with people that are really severely injured. It's not just that their Twitter account is deactivated for a few weeks. It's like that they were live stream raped, on a social media platform, or that 1,200 men were coming to their home and a dating app didn't give a shit, or my client whose daughter was murdered on a first date by somebody she met on Match, who had a record as a sex offender. So it's I'm coming at it from a different angle. I want people who are severely injured to be able to sue these platforms that I feel are partly responsible. But with regard to the far right, I guess, censorship and the end-to-end encryption, I think it's simple. I think that the right has those two agenda things, and what do they, what does big tech have that they, that could be taken away? Section 230. And so I think there's been this real like kind of jujitsu to try to somehow make it all, to create this like, oh, you can't have end-to-end encryption if you still want Section 230 immunity, which is what the Earn It Act ultimately is going to is ultimately probably going to propose. But I think I think it's a creative, it's creative entry by the DOJ. I mean, we all know that Facebook has got more surveillance power than they could ever dream of having. And so this is, a way that they can maybe get back some of the power over, from this like private company who shouldn't have it in the first place.
Well, with that, speaking of jujitsu, we have a very special second mystery guest with us today. I'm proud to introduce Yorick. Yorick is disappearing, falling backwards into money. Wow. Yorick is my punching and kicking things trainer, my violence trainer, as you will, if you will. He was, I think I met you because you were training with John, my partner, at the gym, and John was like, hey, you really should work out more, Kate. That wasn't like, I'm getting fat. It was just like, he was like, it's good for mental health to kick things and punch things. It feels nice.
It is.
And so basically he was like, I'm going to buy you some training sessions with Yorick, because Yorick started personal training. And I was like, his name is actually Yorick? Like alas, poor Yorick? And he's like, oh yeah. And then I showed up at the gym and you had a very big skull. So I'm like, well, yes, exactly. That was pretty great. Oh yeah, we love puppies here.
Everyone,
yay, puppies. Everyone's got their puppies.
I got my puppy.
I love it. Apollo's eating your pizza crust.
That's my pizza.
But yeah, so I tweeted about Yorick specifically after he decided to go, because he's hilarious in top of being a great trainer, and 2, got this great backstory, and then 3, you were really going for it on Instagram for a while, of trying to get Costco, of all places, Costco Kirkland brand, to sponsor your training. And so that was hilarious. Ben loved it. I thought it would be fun. We're starting Pugilism Week. We didn't know we were starting Pugilism Week. I actually lined up both of you. Didn't tell Ben that that you were the guests.
And then I announced Pugilism Week.
And so then independently, Ben was like, we should make this week a sparring week.
We have a warrior against Section 230, and we have a mixed martial artist. So Yorick, let's do some violence.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Oh yeah, you got to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I've been talking smack this whole time. I had no idea.
And remember, that anything you say, Zoom cannot be held liable for. So,
Yes,
so
we were just
you
having
know,
an argument about
like this is your chance to like say inappropriate things that the company is immunized for.
and you have like two
Am
good
I
lawyers
immunized?
to defend you.
All right, sweet. Yeah. You'd be like, all that was said in jest. My client cannot be held accountable for anything he said about Kirkland or Costco. He was young and foolish at the time.
What
still
is
going
this?
for that,
Why
by
do
the
you like that trail mix so much, dude?
It's so good. Yo, honestly, I've tried to like switch to like other trail mixes, but the ratio is perfect. They don't skimp on the cashews. They don't throw sunflower seeds in there, which like is a cardinal sin in my opinion, because then when you're done with your bag of trail mix, you just have a bag of sunflower seeds at the bottom.
It's funny because cardinals love sunflower seeds.
That is true. All right, so it's not a cardinal sin. It ranks high amongst cardinals. But yeah, I tried to switch off. I tried to like find other trail mix brands and like, oh, maybe I could get them to sponsor me. But like, you know, I can't fold on my morals.
So what do you want? What do you want sponsorship for?
Genuinely just free trail mix.
Oh, I see. You're just in it for the free trail mix.
So a friend of mine is a photographer, and before my last fight, he was like, "Hey, when you post these pictures, make sure you tag a whole bunch of companies, and because that's how you get sponsorships." I was like, "All right, I should start taking this side of like the business more seriously." And I was like, "All right," well, I try to think about it like, who do I want to sponsor me, and then what do I really like want? And I was like, the only thing I want that I don't buy often is Kirkland trail mix. So I went on a very hard Instagram campaign. Turns out they have no social media or internet presence whatsoever, but I'm still gunning for it. So Costco, if you're watching this, if you're listening, and you need somebody with the hands defending the toilet paper aisle, get it your boy. Pay me in trail mix or with it.
I'm totally down with that. So listen, I have only ever challenged one person in public to a fight, and it was Vladimir Putin. And I wrote an article about it. The Kremlin actually responded to the article, which I thought was kind of a coup. They said they'd never heard of me and they only take responses from real journalists. But leave aside the merits of the response. So I want to ask, you're a professional fighter. I am a middle-aged desk worker. Middle-aged desk worker with some training in Taekwondo and some Aikido. I've got, black belts in both, but I'm like, I don't want to pretend I'm like some, great ultimate fighter or anything. Against the president of Russia, who, used to be, he's 15 years older than me, used to be a serious judo guy, but I don't think has ever done any striking. And he's not like he's busy being president of Russia and, having people murdered and interfering in other countries' politics and oppressing LGBT people. He's not really spending a lot of time training these days. So how do you shape it up if Putin responded and agreed to meet me on in a location where he can't have me arrested? How do I shape up against Vladimir Putin?
You want my serious answer or I'll give you my serious answer, then my serious answer. Serious answer, being a kickboxer who transitioned to mixed martial arts, it's very, very hard at first to stop that grappling. But if you learn like a couple key things, you can shut it down. And then once they lose that grappling element, it's a lot easier to like beat them up because they can't strike.
But I don't understand that. Hang on, let me just pause you right there, okay?
Yeah, hit me.
Like, we get within a side kick length of each other. Why isn't one side kick to the chest the end of this conversation?
All I'm gonna say is it better be, I've thought the same thing before. It doesn't always pan out like that. Fighting is wild.
Yorick has I will say that Yorick has a really gnarly kick. That's Yorick's signature move. He's
Skinny legs and big feet.
He's really good at the leg thing.
Okay, so
yeah.
So you're saying I better end it quickly because
not quickly, but
if
you better,
he gets his hands on my arms or my leg.
It could be more difficult. So all I'm saying is you got to picket them, you got to stay light on your feet, you got to keep moving, you got to keep it rangy, right? Also depends on where we're fighting. If you guys are fighting in like a basketball court, you can just keep sliding backwards, make him run into stuff. If you're fighting in a ring, a little smaller, more corners, either way, I feel like somebody's probably going to snipe you from the bleachers. So, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like actually Garrett Kasparov warned me about this when this thing was public on Twitter. You know, Kasparov, who knows something about Putin's thuggery, said, you know, he's the kind of guy who will have you beaten up by thugs and then arrested for assaulting the thugs. And so, you know, I think there's whether the fight will be fair or whether I'd be picked off by those guys is a fair question.
Yeah, that was my serious answer, that you're probably not even getting close to putting a foot on him.
Oh my God, but what if he's riding his tiger? Oh no, he doesn't ride a tiger. He
No,
has a tiger and he like rides a horse. I forgot.
Bare chested.
Bare chested. Okay, I mixed up my memes for a second. My Putin memes.
Wait, I'm sad that I need to ask this, but there's a lot of tigers flying around these days. Does he actually own a tiger that he rides around?
No, it's not he didn't ride it around. There's a video of him carrying, is it a tiger or
no, it's
some
a
kind
tiger.
of bobcat or something?
No,
it's a tiger.
Yeah, and there's pictures of him with a tiger, like that he has.
Yeah,
so.
But it was allegedly he was rescuing it, not like a
Kirkland trail mix. Very good. That's great.
So,
by the way, York, this is Carrie. Carrie is my friend who I've been trying to get you guys to bring in to have a workout with you. She also does kickbox training.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
So I want. Oh, there it is. So let's first of all, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're on the Zoom call, dude, just tweet at Costco, sponsor Yorick.
Yeah.
Like we got to get that thing, do it at them, find their little at, and we need what's the hashtag? Is it sponsor Yorick?
Yeah, let's use that. I was been using the ones that popped up from Instagram were Trail Mix for Yo Rock or Trail Mix Martial Arts was a good one.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So let's get this going because
there's no reason. How much trail mix do you require, York?
Oh my God, yo. I was kind of hoping you wouldn't bring that. All right, so after my last fight, I was like, you know what, it's time. I bought myself a giant bag of the 5-pound bag of Kirkland trail mix. And because it was after the fight, was not watching what I was eating, I finished it in 3 days, which I'm not sure how your math is, but that's like 1.6 pounds of trail mix per day. So I can't even keep it in the house. Don't shame me, Kate.
Wait, I miss our visits at the gym. By the way, you and Carrie are both in Brooklyn. I don't know what you're doing for I think you're still in Brooklyn. I don't know because I haven't caught up with you.
Yep.
Okay. But you guys are not far from each other. You're a half a mile walk. So if I don't know what the rules are for social distancing right now, but if you want to do workouts, you guys should meet each other.
Absolutely. As soon as we're allowed to be close together, and we'll get written up or nothing.
Yeah. How does punching work in social distance? That's a really
It doesn't, and I am furious about it. I'm losing my mind. All the gyms are shut down, and now they're saying I think within a month that gyms can open back up with social distancing. So I don't know how we're gonna swing that one because you kind of can't when you're trying to murder each other. Yeah. So I don't know if you have to we just assign everybody a one gym buddy and this is who you're quarantine fighting with and that's it.
Yeah.
Don't go near anybody else.
I think that seems like this is but also to speak of the thing that I chose in finding you and starting to work out with, the reason that it was so good versus running or whatever else was it feels great to just have the socialness of the one other person sparring with and and hitting and oh my God, it just I think that was some of the best therapy I did for a couple. We only met we only did it a dozen times, but it was amazing.
But there is like people who have never done martial arts do not understand how satisfying punching and kicking things and people is. And that's not like, I'm not an especially violent person or anything, although I'm sometimes violent, but you know, like there is a primal delight in being like in having somebody's permission, giving your permission, hit me, kick me, and having that person's permission, hit me, kick me. It's, you know, a discrete period of time. You're not, there's nothing hostile about it. It's, and for some reason, if you call it football and you call it an offensive line and a defensive line, everybody like totally, oh yeah, it's fine. Just run into that person, smack your head into that person's skull, right? And that seems socially acceptable, and we don't call it violence. But if it's, you know, or if it's a baseball sliding into second base, you know, we don't think of it that way. But somehow, if it's a punch or a kick, we think of it as very violent and very sort of socially transgressive. It is an immensely satisfying thing. That's all I got.
Yeah, I think people get the wrong idea about it a lot. I think like when you do it, you can't possibly like there's somebody in front of you trying to take your head off. You know, is like you can't really think about like anything that stresses you out, like your taxes or anything like that. You're just handling that. So it's the most present you could possibly be. But also, I think like the average person really overestimates the amount that they know about it. You know, but we're used to seeing football, we're used to seeing like, you know, hockey or whatever as like in a sport, whereas fighting, like other than like boxing, has not been a popular sport for that long. But technically anybody can do it whenever. So I think people like, you know, put their opinions on it much easier.
Carrie, when did you get into kicking and punching things?
I got into kicking and punching things. I think my first fight was like 2012 or 2013, and I started training like 2 months before that. I'd kind of like dabbled here and there with like different martial arts, like here and there, but like I didn't really train seriously until I remember it was 2012 or 2013. We'll say 2013. I started training with the owner of the gym that me and John know each other from and that we train in. I started training with him, and then 2 months later, I had my first fight.
How about you, Carrie? When did you start kicking and punching people?
Probably around 2010. And I mean,
you outranked me.
Mine is very like not in a ring. I've got a really high kick, and so I became very vain about that. And so I would go to all these cardio kickboxing classes and just kick higher than any of the Equinox instructors. And then I installed a punching bag in my office.
It's velvet. It's velvet.
Because I raged and I was throwing shit at walls and didn't want to be that kind of boss. and so got a punching bag.
York, you should go and train her at her office on her velvet punching bag because no one's there anymore. It would be a perfect.
And also, I genuinely need to see this velvet punching bag. That sounds super lush.
It is so beautiful. I know it's not you don't use it that much, but it's so gorgeous.
What color?
It's maroon.
See, I was gonna say it needs to be some kind of purple. That's perfect.
Selfie or it didn't happen, Carrie.
We were running out of time for the workout that we had planned, but this was so fun anyways. Do you want to teach, unless you want to do something, Yorick? What are you thinking?
Yorick,
whatever you guys want to do.
No. I think look, when we had Maggie on, she sang, Yorick throws punches and kicks. We got to see some punches.
Yeah, I put on my workout clothes for this.
Yeah, I'm wearing my workout clothes.
I am too.
Let's turn this virtual background off. I feel like I need to specifically teach you how to defend from Putin takedown.
I'm gonna move.
Okay.
There we go. Back to this nice exposed brick and tapestry behind me.
I like it.
Yeah. That's nice, right? Okay. All right. Find some space. We gotta punch the air.
You guys want to work out with us?
Okay, I'm finding space. I'm gonna punch things.
How much time do we have for the violence?
Like whatever, 10 minutes. Is that enough?
Oh yeah. I got plenty of time.
I don't know how much people want to watch us work out. No, it's kind of entertaining.
I mean, I'm trying to see that high kick. I wasn't planning on any kicks. I don't have
Yeah,
space.
now I was gonna. Now, are you outside?
No
This
reason
is
why you
cool.
shouldn't kick.
I want to see Carrie's high kick. I don't know if I can kick things.
Wait.
I'm gonna hit a
Oh,
tape.
whoa, you're outside.
Background. That's nice.
Whoa, not bad, Carrie.
All right. Ben, you lefty or righty? Wait, you all know how to stand.
Right.
You've all hit stuff before. All right.
Yeah.
Stand how you stand. We're gonna work on the jab first. So whatever hand's in front. For me, it's the I switched, so I'm bistantial. But whatever hand you like in the front, we're gonna start with that one, right?
All right.
You're gonna start every single punch is going to start from your feet, right? Whoops, knocked you over. Every single punch starts from your feet. So what we're gonna do is push from the back foot, take a little step with the front foot. All right.
All right.
So again, hands up, push from the back foot. Pop it out, bring it right back in. I'm gonna fix this camera angle. I'm gonna yell at y'all. This is called the jab. Can go to the face, can go to the body, can go to the stomach, the chest, right? Can go to the eyes, go to the chin. It's very good for keeping Vladimir Putin away from you when he's trying to clinch up, but make sure you keep those feet moving, right?
Carrie,
So
what
again,
is this fucking look? This is like not fair. I'm like I haven't washed this sweatshirt in 3 weeks, and you're like in a hole.
Tor, I know. Tor got me this whole like outfit.
Okay.
Yo, just waiting to bust this out. I feel like a hobo right now.
I don't
Keep
like
that rear hand up. Keep that jab going. If you want, double it up. All right, sweet. Everybody looking real mean.
Do most people like crosses better?
Yeah, I like crosses better.
Yeah, crosses are way better. We're doing that now. So again, after the jab, what we're going to do is throw the rear hand, all right? So it's going to start with a very big rotation from my back foot,
Okay.
then my hip, then my shoulder and my fist, right? So again, foot, hip, shoulder, and fist. Foot and hip go first, then my shoulder rotates, my fist goes out. Boom, right? So let's go jab, cross, lead hand, rear hand.
It feels really good.
Oh, it's the best. You can do this cool flourish after you hit your cross as well, where you kind of lasso it real quick. I don't know why, but I see a lot of people doing that.
When you take Putin down in the first hit, you're gonna.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying I don't do it. I do it all the time.
No. I'm totally down with that because, Putin's going down first with one punch or kick, and definitely want to spike the football afterwards.
You know what I'm talking about.
What's this move?
That is.
What's
I don't know how to defend against that one. See, that was pretty good, but I feel like you need to close your eyes and look away a little bit, like this. The classic playground tactic.
It's really good to talk to you. We should do this on Zoom soon.
Speaking of which, been running online violence classes.
Yeah.
Been watching families across America punch the air in their houses. Just because I want to see this high kick that's been talked about so much, we're gonna throw a kick after this, right? So it's going to be the easiest to throw whatever leg is in the back. I'm going to reposition my camera so I don't knock over my whole house.
Yeah, I'm gonna knock some stuff over.
You know what? It's worth it. Okay, so starting from the rear leg, I'm going to get up tall on my lead leg. I'm going to just rotate. Whoop, right? So hands are up. Whatever side I'm kicking with, I can swing that arm down if I want to, right? So I come up, I start to turn my hips, the leg just goes right by. Again, up, right by, don't kick your lamp.
It's actually really a lot easier to turn on this floor than it is the gym floor.
Hardwood and socks, that's what I'm talking about.
Right?
Mm-hmm. That's how Putin does it. I'm gonna stop running my mouth about Putin. I'm not trying to get Kremlin out here.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, we have a lot of trolls.
Ben, please defend me.
This is
Carrie,
kind
let me
of
see that kick.
Carrie, let's do this kick. Holy shit, you really do have a high kick.
Carrie with the crazy legs, my God.
Yeah, seriously. You and Carrie really should train because you have crazy legs too.
Now let's do it. Ben, you need to bring her when you fight old Vlad.
We can come do it on my deck.
Kind of cool that
Perfect.
you have a deck to do it on.
Yeah, this is so great.
Are we talking about me and you? Are we talking about me and you training or the Putin fight?
Putin and Ben on my deck.
Yeah, you'll host.
Perfect.
This is amazing. That was actually super fun. York, that was so great.
So we have now had a live Putin training round with an actual mixed martial arts professional who should be sponsored by Costco Kirkland Trail Mix. And it is now, we've run a little bit over, but we're totally cool with that. Yorick, Carrie, thank you so much for coming. Awesome launch of Pugilism Week on In Lieu of Fun. We will be back tomorrow with pugilism, people who actually want to fight with each other. We're going to give them a forum. It's going to be awesome. There's going to be violence, and Zoom will not be liable. YouTube will not be liable for it. And remember, until then, if you can't have fun, you can still hang out with us in lieu of fun.
Love you guys. Thank you for all coming on.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.